Hello, everyone, and welcome to Edison TV. My name is Jyoti Prakash, Director, Healthcare at the Edison Group. We are joined today by Sten Sorensen, the CEO of Cereno Scientific, a clinical stage biotech which recently pivoted focus towards the rare disease space and successfully raised 250 million Swedish krona in debt funding to take this strategy forward. Welcome, Sten.
Thank you.
So to kick off, it has been an eventful few months for the company, starting with the positive Phase IIa data for your lead asset CS1 in PAH, and more recently, the pivot towards rare diseases, especially with your second pipeline asset, CSO14. What triggered this change in strategy for you?
Well, I think, just to jump a little backward to our pioneering effort with HDAC inhibitors into the space of cardiovascular disease and lung diseases. So we decided on doing that pivot several years back. And that was triggered by a review of all the literature that's available and published with HDAC inhibition, and most of them with our lead compounds, VPA. And what we discovered then was that we had a potential with this approach that was much wider than thrombosis prevention without bleeding risk, which was the initial focus. So we discovered that there is a documentation around prevention and reversal of remodeling, systemic and pulmonary pressure reduction, antifibrotic and anti-inflammatory capacity, as well as the capacity to prevent thrombosis without bleeding. So with that broad opportunity and potential with this mode of action, we decided to go after an indication that would immediately fit very well to the pathophysiology and would have a rapid progression, making it possible for us to go for an orphan disease and also have a good ability to show efficacy quite early. And as you know, the timelines and capital investments for orphan diseases, as well as its protection on the market with orphan designation, which we have approved both for US and Europe for the lead asset. So that's we believe, a good strategy for us as a biotech and with this potential. So that's how this started. And what we then have done is that we know from preclinical work that we have this prevention and reversal of muscle hypertrophy in the pulmonary vessel and in the heart in animal pH studies. And very similar to the data that exists for the latest approved drug, sotatercept or Winrevair. And what we then have done also is that we have pursued with our second asset preclinical work in these models, PAH models with its rats that you do. And what we discovered, which we also released on our Capital Markets Day in a couple of months ago, was that we have an impact on plexiform lesions that is directly dose dependent and also an impact on fibrosis. Being the origin of this disease, the plexiform lesions in PH, but fibrosis being very important for other diseases such as idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. So with this palette of potential and characteristics, we decided for a second drug in HDAC inhibition, the new chemical entity CSO14, to pursue IPF based on the impact that we saw in that study, but also previously published documentation with HDAC inhibition and our mother compound VPA. And what I should say that our new chemical entity is actually a modification of the first VPA. So it's a deuterized compound that has improved the profile of that drug and also is making it possible to patent with a new chemical entity patent, which we actually then obtained in the first market, UK, this year. So that's the background of our move into rare diseases, which is now comprised in two PH for the lead compound, CS1, and then IPF for the second HDAC program, CS014. And what I also should say then, we have communicated this on our Capital Markets Day, is that we are reviewing our third compound, CS585, which is a very selective, very potent IP receptor agonist, which has been invented by Mike Hollinsdad, professor at the University of Michigan. And we have required full rights for development and commercialization of this new molecule, which all the research were published in Blood a year ago, and got its own podcast and editorial. So a new strategy for prevention thrombosis without increasing the risk of bleed, hopefully here, which has been documented in cremaster models. And what we are doing and what we communicated on our Capital Markets Day was that we're also reviewing orphan disease or rare disease, thrombotic diseases for this IP receptor agonist. So you can say rightfully that we are moving into the orphan or rare disease space with, it seems like it will be all our three compounds. We'll see with the last one here.
Well, that seems like a good strategy. And you mentioned IPF for CS014. So can you tell us a bit more about this indication and why did you choose this particular indication to go for CS014?
Yeah, so I think that there are several reasons. Of course, the platform of science here and the drug itself and the documentation that exists for HDAC inhibition being able to prevent and reverse fibrosis in this indication in animal models. So we now come along with a new changed molecule, CS014, that should be able to obtain the same data in that indication. We also then have documented this new compound in pH models with fibrosis impact. So, and dose dependently so. So the scientific rationale and platform and reason to believe is there. Then, of course, we are, as a company, aiming for patients that have a high unmet need on the market. And if you look at this indication and patient population, it's even worse than the fatal pulmonary arterial hypertension indication. The disease with IPF has 3 to 5 years life expectancy after diagnosis. And this indication mostly affect men compared to PH, which mostly affect women. So there is a couple of drugs available on the market for this population, but they really haven't neither improved symptoms, quality of life, or life expectancy to our knowledge. So there is a big unmet need on the market, which we believe we can fill with this approach to impact disease progression. Hopefully halt the progression, slow it down, or even reverse it. So that's the background.
Excellent. So continuing with CS014, you recently announced the initiation of the multiple ascending dose part of the Phase I trial. How is that progressing, and when can we expect a data update from this Phase I study?
Well, we went into the clinic, I think it was in July this summer, and we are on schedule, and it's going really well. We're performing this study, Phase I study in healthy volunteers in Uppsala together with CTC, a CRO partner. And we just started the MAD sequence of this study, and it's aimed to be completed by mid-spring and then reported by Q2. So we are on track and we're looking forward to complete it. I should also say that whilst that then will happen, we are also now then pursuing strategic discussions with advisors and internally on how to, what kind of trial we'll pursue in IPF in Phase II, which we will then supply to regulatory authorities during the fall and hopefully get that then approved during the fall of next year.
That's great. And moving on, we all understand that clinical development is a capital-intensive exercise. So it was quite encouraging to see Cereno being able to raise 250 million Swedish krona in debt funding. So can you tell us a bit more about the deal terms and economics, and how do you plan to utilize these funds?
Well, yeah, we are happy with that capital structure, and we continue our collaboration with Fenja, who already had a loan structure with us on 90 million. And we now extended that and then also invited their new partner from the US, Arena. So it's their first investment in the Nordic area together, and they and we believe that we were a good first investment for them. So 250 million will take us into 2026 and make us able to pursue several key milestones over next year. And I would say that the upcoming milestone, the next really important upcoming milestone is, of course, our regulatory discussions and then submission and seeking approval for a Phase IIb/III trial, pivotal trial, for our lead asset, CS1 in PAH. So we aim to get that approval during the spring, first half of the year, and then to initiate that trial early 2026. So that's a key milestone that's we're gonna be able to, we believe, obtain or reach with this capital. The other key milestone during next year with CS1 is that we have gained or obtained extended access program approval by the FDA for CS1 in PH, and really requested by our investigators to seek that. And they didn't want to let go of our drug when they saw what it was able to do on top of standard of care in PAH. So we applied and got it approved in January this year. And we have dosed our first patient. We believe we will have up to 10 patients, which is about a little less than half of the population in our trial. And that will be on long-term use. So we will then be able to study both with CardioMEMS, the implantable technology that we have obtained from Abbott, to be able to measure hemodynamics and pulmonary arterial pressure as many times as we want wirelessly to the physician's office. And we will also be able to, and we aim to, study impact on long artery structures based with our partnership with Fluida. The company Fluida has a CT scan technology that is able to detect changes that medications could potentially provide, like CS1, in the pulmonary arterial vessel. So long-term use of our drug on top of standard of care will be able to study classical parameters, CardioMEMS technology on pulmonary pressures, etc., and lung structure, pulmonary artery structure with Fluida's technology. So that's another key milestone that we will be able to study and report on next year with CS1. The third key milestone next year is with our CS014, our second drug with HDAC inhibition as mode of action. And that is, of course, the completion then of the Phase I trial, which we aim to report in Q2 of next year. And then the approval of that drug for IPF Phase II study in the second half of the year. So many things to be able to reach and work for with this capital that we have obtained. Now to the structure. Well, it's a loan with the 75 million of the 250 is convertible notes. And then there is a warrant package. And what we are happy with is that the structure actually is only causing a little less, or about 3.98% dilution. So that's a good thing for all the shareholders, which both the board, key management, and all our 10,000 shareholders approximately are happy with. So not a lot of dilution. And in the current market climate, rights issues are done at 50% rebate or so. So to be able to obtain this now, we think was a good thing for the company and for the shareholders. And then, of course, the warrant package is a 5-year warrant package that will only cause a 2% dilution eventually if utilized. So that's the key terms. I would also say that we are in those terms, we have to pay back the loan by April of 2026.
Yes. So just another question on the loan structure. We understand that a portion of this financing is contingent on the FDA approval for the next phase of development for CS1. So just want to understand if you're already engaging with the authorities, and are you on track for this H125 timeline which you have cited?
Yeah, it's thank you for highlighting that. That's a key milestone we need to obtain in order to be able to pull down 50 million of the 250 in addition. And that's within 6 to 9 months. So we're quite comfortable with our ability to obtain an approval of Phase IIb trial. So FDA's major concern when approving a Phase II trial, Phase IIb, is that you have safety and tolerance well documented for the drug. And what we all, of course, know is that VPA has been in man for 50, 60 years for the prevention of neurological or treatment of neurological disorders such as epilepsy. And it's been used in a dosing range that's higher than ours. And we are using down to 1/5 as an effective dose compared to what's used in epilepsy. So, and the documentation is of safety and tolerance is well known for neurological disorders. And in addition, we had a very clean and nice profile, unexpected safety concerns or reports, and good tolerance in our study in Phase IIa here. So that information we believe is enough to get it approved. And then, of course, we will be able to also seek approval for the structure to study efficacy in the next trial, which is the key thing beyond exposing the drug to more patients for safety and tolerance reasons. And so 2B, we believe, is not an issue, neither necessarily to a pivotal trial, but that's more of a discussion. Should we go ahead with a 2B3 trial immediately, or should we stay with the 2B? So that we will see eventually what is the best thing to do.
Excellent. So moving on to your third asset, CS585, which is in the preclinical stage, and you recently presented new data at the AHA. Can you briefly talk about that?
Well, so, what has been documented. So this drug, as I mentioned earlier, is innovation by Mike Hollinstat and a colleague at University of Michigan. And Mike is a professor there and studies blood, and he's a key force in research around blood diseases, and not the least thrombosis. And we engaged with University of Michigan originally to study CS1 and CS014. And so when we did that work together with Mike, he highlighted that he also had a drug that he was working on that he felt was very exciting and could potentially be something that we would be interested in. And we reviewed the data at that time and decided to go ahead and negotiate with the University of Michigan, and we agreed then to obtain development and full commercial rights of it. So this is a drug that is, the innovation is really that Mike Hollinstat discovered an endogenic lipid that's very selective and very potent for the IP receptor. And he has then constructed a molecule based on that lipid that is CS585. And later then documented the selectivity and the high potency of this drug for the receptor. And that work has been published in Blood a year ago with an editorial and a podcast from Blood covering this, as I mentioned. So quite some interest around this. And then he has, and we have together with him, communicated more of the findings around this. And one of the findings here that he communicated American Heart is the long-acting power or efficacy of the drug in thrombosis. So there's a much longer action than the current available drugs that he compared to. So that's, of course, important if you want to utilize this drug for prevention of thrombosis. There has been attempts with IP receptor agonist in the past, but due to their short acting, they have not really have a clinical utility. And now we have then a novel, very potent, very selective IP receptor that looks to be something that we could pursue for thrombosis and could be very effective with this long acting. And in addition, with this selectivity for the receptor, we believe we'll have less off receptor side effects compared to those available on the market.
Great. So there's a lot going on for Cereno, and it looks like the next couple of years are going to be a very active period for the company. So what are some of the key milestones you're most excited about in the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, and maybe I mentioned a few of them already, but the key milestone for us coming up now is to get the final clinical study report for our Phase II trial with our lead program, CS1, the HDAC inhibitor in PAH, where we saw very positive data on signals of efficacy with 44% or 9 out of 21 reducing risk score with 1 point or more, which corresponds to a reduction of mortality within 12 months of 23%. And validated risk scores is utilized by physicians in their office to define the risk of their patients for deterioration and for mortality, and then tailor their therapy thereafter. So we're very happy with that impact and seeing that already after 3 months therapy on top of standard of care. So that was one finding here in this study. The second key finding was that another thing that physicians do is that they define the physical capacity of their patients by defining their functional class, New York Heart Association classification. And that is a 1, 2, 3, or 4 classification. And if you're 1, you barely feel your diagnosis, maybe a little difficult to breathe on exercise. And if you're classified as 4, you're bedridden. You can't leave your bed. And what we saw in this study is that 1/3 of the patients, we moved one class to a lighter classification. So 7 patients out of 21 were moved to a lighter classification. 5 from New York Heart 3 to 2, and 2 from New York Heart classification 2 to 1. So that's another objective that the physician wants to achieve with drugs if possible. And so now we reduced risk score and we improved the physical class of the patients. The third thing we saw was that we reduced the MPAP, medium pulmonary arterial pressure, as measured with CardioMEMS in 2/3 of the patients, sustainable. So that's the third objective a physician has in his office. So these signals of efficacy we are very happy with, and now this is pulled together in a clinical study report, and this is what we're going to discuss with the FDA. The safety and tolerance, which was fairly clean here, safety completely clean, and the tolerance was good. And then these efficacy signals. And so the key milestones, of course, is to get that approval from the FDA. And we have not yet engaged with them because we first need a clinical study report. But we have a very targeted plan, and we believe we'll get this approved before the summer. So that's one key milestone. The second one is, of course, the readout, long-term usage of CS1 in PAH. On top of standard therapy under our compassionate use or extended access program. So those who've been in our trial in PAH, they can, together with the physician, agree to use our drug long-term now, despite it's not being approved for market authorization. So it's approved to be used that way under protocol. And we have had information from our investigators that there is about 10 patients that they want to put on continuous use here of CS1, and we have dosed the first one. So we aim to get the 10 patients dosed and then have long-term evaluation data out on cardiomems, on fluida, on lung pulmonary arterial structure, as well as other parameters. So that's another key milestone next year. And the third one is, of course, CS1's completion of its Phase I trial and then approval of a Phase II in the fall. So, some key milestones for us. And of course, then the third program, CS585, will continue to pursue tox studies and other data in preclinical and aim to complete that as we move into 2026. So it will be preclinical work next year.
Great. Thank you so much for talking to us, Sten. We look forward to more updates on your ongoing programs and your strategy. For our audience wanting to learn more about Cereno Scientific, please refer to edisongroup.com. Thank you.